as much as I wanted it to, AI has not made my work disappear. In fact, I feel like I'm working more now than I was before AI. And AI has moved the work into judgment, orchestration, and verification. So I'm going to talk to you today about what that looks like for work today and what you can do about it. And stay to the end, because at the end, I'm going to have a bunch of questions for leaders to ask their teams, especially as you're adopting AI work for your team. So let's start at the beginning. The myth out there is that AI makes work vanish. This is what everybody's talking about. The promise that all these companies are making is that you can automate the boring stuff, save hours of time, and reduce your workload. To be honest, that is only true partially. There are so many things that can go faster. Drafts, summaries, code, research, writing things, those can all go out faster for sure. But the missing part is that someone still has to decide what actually matters, what is true, and what actually needs to happen next. If you're doing something that is dumb and pointless, then doing it faster with AI doesn't actually help at all. So what happens is that the work moves upstream and it moves downstream. So the upstream work, which is what you're doing before the work actually happens, you have to define what the real problem is. You have to find and provide good source material. You have to set constraints on what the work actually looks like. And then finally, you have to decide what the good solution looks like, because it's not always clear what that looks like. So let's take a real world example for this. If you want to make a game, you have to decide what the real game is. You have to provide source material to make it look good and give an idea of how to make it work. You have to set constraints. You can't just say, make this game and do whatever you want. You have to have rules. You have to have boundaries. You have to have limits on what players can and can't do in the game. And then finally, you have to decide what good looks like. Does good look like a visual thing? Does it look like a play rule type of thing? Or does good look like it just works and I can put it in the app store? The downstream work also changes. And these are the things that happen after the work. You have to verify the outputs. You have to make sure that the things that are working are actually working. You have to integrate it into your systems. You have to fix all of the edge cases, which is the thing that doesn't happen very often, but it happens enough that if it doesn't work, people are going to say, forget this, I'm not using it at all. You have to communicate the decision that is happening, and you have to train people. You can't just say, all right, AI is doing it now. People still have to know what work they have to do to initiate the AI, and they have to know what work has to be done after the AI is done with it. And then finally, you've got to maintain the workflow. And this is a piece that almost nobody talks about, because something still has to be done to make sure that it is working. If something fails 20 times in a row and everybody thought the AI was just doing it, that's going to lead to an ultimate failure for sure. So let me talk about some examples from recent work. So I have a few different things that I'm doing with other people and for myself. So I need to launch ads for a brand recently. So getting the ads launched, that was actually pretty easy. You just put in the ad, say who you want to reach, but then you had to worry about tracking. You had to make sure that the checkout actually worked, that the ad went to the right page, that page was ready, that there was support available in case something didn't work, and all of that stuff. That all is part of something that needed to happen. But the ads part, hey, chat, do ads for me, did actually work. That part was pretty easy. It made the images. It said, here's the UTM code that you need to use. That was pretty easy. But all the other stuff was where the challenge was, and that was where it just fell down on its face. The website wasn't ready for the traffic. The tracking wasn't happening on the client end. And so the ads would run, but then they couldn't see what action people were taking. So that all needed to be set up. Now, some of that, going back to what I said before, the upstream and the downstream work, some of that was the downstream work that it was not integrated into the systems. And that became a very real challenge that delayed the project from being successful and ended up wasting a bunch of money because we couldn't see if this was actually working or not. Another example is having a AI second brain. Now, this one is interesting because the way that I teach people how to use an AI brain, it helps them understand where their context is and what needs to happen. And what happened in this situation was that the AI brain was taking the summaries that they were saying, here, remember this, and it was putting them in the wrong place. So if one person has this task that they need to do and they want the AI brain to remember it, it was not linking to the right note and was not linking to the right context. And so when it was time for them to do something, then it became a challenge. And then the last example I'll share is relates to client automation. And this is a lot of upstream work. What needs to happen? Cleaning up the forms, making sure the right data fields are being used, having good ownership, and having good source of truth mapping. What does that mean? That means that we know where the right information is coming from. And that all needed to happen upstream. Before we even touched the AI tools, we needed to know what data was correct. What was our source of truth? Where is that source of truth going to live? Before I started working with them, the source of truth was in the boss's head and in the secretary's head in two different places, and they didn't agree on what those were. So one of the things that we had to do was say, all right, no more putting stuff in the CRM. You have to pull actual client data or potential client data from a database that we know has all of the information for the companies you're going to be selling to. That made it much easier for everybody to get on board, but that also meant changing behavior. You're not allowed to just add something to the CRM anymore. You have to go find a source of truth and use that so that we're not relying just on what we say. That was really important. So the next thing that happens with this moving of the work is that you have new ways of failing, which kind of stinks, but AI can be very good at being confident, but having the wrong outputs and saying, yep, this is what it is, and it's absolutely wrong. That definitely happens. So what you have to pay attention to is making sure that not only is the AI confident, but that it actually has the right outputs and that you know what the right outputs look like. Another way of failing is that you have scattered drafts with no owner, where nobody cares who is doing this because the AI just did it. And then it wrote this draft, and maybe it saved it somewhere. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it's on one person's computer and not another person's because it wasn't saved to a central location. That can be really annoying as well. Another way of failing is that agents can duplicate or overwrite work that somebody has already done. And imagine this is your situation and you write a bunch of social media posts that need to go out. And then your boss tells the agent to go rewrite those same social media posts. And then nobody can remember where those social media posts actually are that are supposed to be run. So the social media manager doesn't know where they're at. So she asks the agent to write it again. So now 3 different people have written social media posts and nobody knows which of the right ones are and what has been approved. And there's no workflow for that. That's a very common thing that I see also. Another way of failing is that these automations run, but they don't improve the business. And if it's not improving the business, then it's not worth it either. You wouldn't hire someone to run the business and not do anything to improve it. If this person's job is to put the widget into column B and that's it, they're not doing anything to improve the business and they're not going to be a value add. So people and automations and agents need to add value and improve the business and not just run it. And then this is not an exhaustive list to be sure, but the last one that I was thinking of is that sometimes you have more artifacts than decisions. AI can spin up 12 different ways of doing something, and then you have 12 different drafts of ways to go. but somebody still has to make the decision on what we're going to do. So that leads me to the real managerial skills that you need. And I've talked a little bit about these already, but number one, the source of truth. You need to know where the truth lives, where the AI gets it from, where you get it from, and where things go. You also need to know who has access to what, so that when something is done, where does it go and who has access to it next? That includes having approval rules to make sure that we are approving things correctly. And it also means that we need to have verification steps in place so that you can verify what work was done and how it is beneficial to the organization. In addition to this, you also need to have good feedback loops, because without looking back and saying, here's the way that it worked or the way that it didn't work, you're going to have problems. And if it can't be improved constantly, then it's going to end up becoming stale very quickly. And it's very easy. One of the things that I was working on with the company was helping them create TikTok videos. And they said, all right, we got one that is good. We just want to do the same thing over and over. Now, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But what they ended up getting is very sick of that same style of TikTok video. And it was great because it was easy to make, but it was terrible because nobody liked it. And if you don't even like what you're posting, then I promise you nobody else is going to like it either. So the other thing that the good AI work requires is having a daily log of what is happening. My logs of my daily work get to sometimes 600 to 800 lines long. That's 600 to 800 different tasks that the AI is doing for me, which is a ton. And then the other thing is you have to know when not to automate, because sometimes it's not good to have the automation. Like right now, I am making this video and I could have just created an AI to do it for me, but this is actually me talking to you. So all the stops and starts and all that kind of stuff that's part of who I am. The bad eye contact where sometimes I'm looking at the video and not, that is part of who I am. And so I'm leaving that stuff in to make it real. And maybe I'm going to use eye contact and make it so I'm looking at the camera all the time. And then it's not going to be in there. And I did decide to automate that. We'll see when we watch this video in the end. So there are a couple different things that we need to think about for this. Number one, we need to recognize that human development is as essential as agent development when it comes to what we're working on. So the goal here is not to replace tasks only. The goal is to increase people's capabilities. And I talk about this in my dissertation, and I call it cognitive equity, that when we use AI to build people up and increase their capacity, we are developing cognitive equity. When we use AI to just replace tasks and get them out of the way, we are creating cognitive debt. And that's something that we have to be aware of. If all you're doing is just making it so that you are just not having to make any choices and the AI is doing everything for you, you are decreasing your ability and what makes you human and valuable. The goal really should be humans spending more time on better thinking and doing the kind of thinking that only they can do. And where good AI systems help is that they make people more capable because they preserve the context and the choices and they reduce preventable mistakes. Now, here's a good example. I have notes that I've been taking for the last 17 years. In plain text documents, I use a tool called Obsidian. I have over 10,000 notes in this Obsidian vault. And every single one of them is tagged and ordered differently because I have bad systems in that regard. So a good AI system will be able to take the metadata from each note and organize it and connect it to others in a way that makes a lot more sense than what I'm doing. For me, my notes only connect when I intentionally make them connect. And that means that I actually take the action to make them connect. Whereas a good AI system can make me more capable by making those connections for me and making sure that those don't fall through the cracks. So for example, I like to remember everybody that I meet with, and I have a goal to have a 10-year relationship with anybody that I spend time with, any meaningful amount of time. And so what the AI can do is it can surface and connect somebody who talked about the same thing as somebody else, but did it months and weeks apart from each other. And what's valuable there is that I may not remember that connection, but AI can. And I may be able to remember, hey, I remember that I talked to somebody about this specific thing and I took notes on this specific thing. And the AI can go search and find that faster than I can, because I may not remember the exact words, but the AI can use semantic search to figure out kind of what I was saying. So those are my ideas around human development. Now, let's talk about some practical questions for leaders as you are considering adopting AI in your organization. So here are some key questions to ask. Number one, where does this work start? And if the work starts at the point of the work being done, then you know that's not true. The work starts far before that. And that's the upstream things that we need to be thinking about. Where does this work actually start? It starts way back before. If there's a sales call that's happening, does the work start at the sales call? No, it definitely doesn't. It starts back at the prospecting stage, at the lead generation stage, at the follow-up stage. That's where the work really starts. To be prepared for a sales meeting and to have the AI help you be ready for a sales meeting, you have to recognize that it starts much earlier on. Number two, what source of truth does it depend on? And this really matters, because if you are letting the AI decide what the source of truth is, the AI is going to use the training data that it has. But your business is unique and your processes are unique. And so you have to say, this is what the source of truth is. Now, that may be an employee handbook. That may be a list of SKUs that you are using to sell things to people. That could be a list of services that you have. But that source of truth really does matter. Question number 3 for leaders to ask is, who can approve the result? And does it have to be the highest person possible to approve it? Or should it be the lowest person possible to approve it? This is really key, because some decisions should require someone senior making that decision. But other decisions, it only creates bottlenecks when it has to be approved higher up. So I love this story from Ritz-Carlton that they say, I don't know the exact number, but it is something like any employee at Ritz-Carlton can spend up to $1,000 without any approval to make sure that the guest has a wonderful experience. So that means that the concierge, that the cook, that the waitress, that the maid can comfortably spend $1,000 just to make sure that the customer has a great experience. There are many stories of people doing crazy things to make sure that people have a good experience at the Ritz-Carlton, which is very great and wonderful. They have those profit margins that they can definitely do that. But if they have to go through 6 approval processes to get it to work like we did when I was a school principal, then it quickly becomes, it's just not worth it. I'm just not going to do this. So who approves the result? The person closest to the work, in my opinion, should be the one approving the result. They should not have to ask for approval. If they could do that action themselves, they should be able to approve the result. And if you can't trust them to approve an AI result, but you can trust them to do the work, then there's obviously a mismatch there. And that's a bigger issue that we need to talk about. Question number 4, how will we verify it worked? Some things you'll be able to see very easily that it worked. Other things, it may not be that clear, but you have to be able to say, this is what it looks like when it does work. And you have to know what that looks like. So for example, the ads that I was talking about before, the ads worked. They drove traffic, at least according to Facebook, but we couldn't tell if they worked because on the back end, we couldn't filter out who was coming from that ad and who was coming from something else, who was signing up because of the ad and who was signing up because they've been lurking on our pages for a long time. So you have to be able to track whether it worked or not. Question number 5 is, where will the decision be recorded? There's a source of truth, and then there is a final resting place for decisions. Recognizing what the decision was and whether or not it worked needs to live somewhere also. And that's something that you can't overlook. You have to be able to say, these are the decisions that it made, and we can tell if they worked or not. And one idea is to have a list in a spreadsheet that says, this was the decision made, and this was whether or not it worked, and this is how we know or don't know. There are ways to set that up. It doesn't have to be that intense or complex, and some things you'll be able to tell very quickly whether it worked or whether it didn't. But the key is you have to have that decision recorded somewhere. I recommend daily logs almost all the time for this stuff because the AI can easily write to a daily log pretty much anywhere. The 6th question is, what breaks if the AI is wrong? If the AI is wrong, are you going to lose credibility with customers, or are you going to be able to laugh about it? Is it something that is absolutely vital to your business? You better make sure that it is impossible for the AI to be wrong in that situation. And this is where the idea of deterministic scripts versus non-deterministic responses from AI really matters a lot, because deterministic scripts have a known answer that's going to come out every single time. And non-deterministic answers from AI can change day in and day out. Because remember, AI is just a prediction machine. So all it's doing is predicting the next best word. So if the AI is wrong and it predicts the next wrong word, it may think that it was right. But if it's not, then that could be very damaging. And you need to understand where in your business is the line of whether or not that is okay. So deterministic scripts, what they will do is they will say, do these things and you'll get the same result every time. That is computer programming that has been going on for as long as computers have been around. The non-deterministic answers is AI making its best guess as it's going through. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that it has given you some things to think about. And if you need help with creating any of these things or talking through any of these in your business, come visit me at optimizationdoc.com.